Welcome to Grab Overload, and in this week's episode, we got more news to talk about for the Tony Tech's Topic episode here, and we're going to start off with Nvidia, and they are now adding in the 5080s to the Geforce Now service. So if you want to game in the cloud and you want the 5080, you are able to do that. And from what I understand here is that you will also get it for the same like premium price that it usually was. So the ultimate plan is unchanged. Performance is also unchanged. So 20, 10 respectively there. And if you need more storage and stuff, there's extra options for that. So it's actually glad that Nvidia didn't raise the prices, but you get 5080 performance now on those GeForce Now systems. One thing is interesting is I want to know how many Nvidia like 5080s are being put in there. That's one question I've always had. Like, how big is this service? Because it's not like Nvidia has slowed this service down at all. So, is this a significant number? You know, tens of thousands, or how many is it? It'd be really interesting. Even if it was like 10,000 versus 90,000, that's a pretty big gap overall. Would be interesting just to overall see like, oh, there's actually quite a bit of people that use the 5080 side of that high-end performance model of these systems of this streaming service. But interesting. Overall, I'm actually kind of glad that Nvidia is kind of keeps on, putting effort into this. If we had Google, that would be gone by now, right? We've seen what Microsoft's done on their side, and I guess that's, maybe something they're going to expand a little bit more, something we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. But it's one of those things where you look at all the other competing services, and while there's some out there, it seems like GeForce Now kind of gets the biggest and brightest spotlight. So good to see that they continue to push forward, and they got Blackwell now if you're on that service. So continuing with Nvidia here, they did have a new driver out now, 581.08, and this has some fixes, some improvements to DLSS for global overrides, but game bug fixes, general fixes for the NVAC encoder. So they've been, improving it, and that's a good thing. And this supports still from 700 on up. So if you have an old 700 card that's still there, I believe that's 590 that this will finally go away. The support will go away. I should say, not the driver. The support should go away for the 700, and I think also the 900, right? Those two, maybe even the 10 series. I can't. I'm trying to recall that was almost a month ago that they were, but that's where Nvidia looking at cleaning up, only supporting certain systems, and well, that's kind of what we get to, which is sad, but this is where I would like open source side of things, or allowing at least some sort of open sourceness, so that then the users and community could support it if they're still into that and using that card. It could be a benefit. The Linux side has some of this, there, where especially with the AMD side, but the Windows side really doesn't, and that's kind of the disappointing side to all of the closed sourceness, is that after support stops for a product, you can keep using it, but you're not going to get the benefits of game tweaks and stuff like that. But moving on to Nvidia is bundling now with their cards the Borderlands 4 with the 50 series. The DLC also is included, and it's available till September 27th. Really interesting here that they are adding this in. I mean, it's 5090 on down to the 5070, but I can't remember the last time Nvidia did something like this. They have such a demand, and they're such a driver that usually you don't see this. Usually they're, we're the ones that's going to go through, and we're going to sell through, and I think they had one for the 40 series, if I recall, but it was so like, again, I was like, why would they do something like this? They're the driving commander. They got most of the market, but maybe it's a little bit different with the 9070 from AMD this time. I don't know. Like, this is one of those things where I'm like, wow, this is unusual for Nvidia. So that's not something I would expect from Nvidia, but it's something that they did. So let's see here. I know that there was more. I thought there was more Nvidia stories. Yeah. So this is one where Nvidia. If I don't know if you saw in the news, but Nvidia went through and they made a deal. I think AMD did too, where the U.S. government gets an X amount of percentage of the AI chips sold to foreign countries. I think it was just AI. It could have been everything, but that's it's a tariff in sense, right? With a specific company to negotiate that, in my opinion. So with this, Nvidia needs to have that profit margin. They need to have that money, right? So they're going to increase their prices to basically offset that. Makes some sort of sense, right? They want to keep that profit margin up. They want to be the world's most valuable company. Keep that up, and only way to do that is make sure your prices go up so that they can continue down that path of having all the money. So that's kind of that's kind of how I see it. But we'll see. Well, we got some AMD stories that are pretty interesting, I think. So especially when it comes to AI. How that is, because Nvidia's got a lot of the competition, especially with CUDA and stuff. But as this goes forward, this is where I think Intel would have some advantage at some point if they were to do it. Like, get these NPUs out there into these models and starting to, using that for calculation. AMD has the same thing that they could use, and if they can just do that, maybe it's not all just the graphics cards being sold, but then you got these NPUs doing it. But I hope Intel all the best. I really hope that they turn it around and they really get on their feet again. It's just, I see some of these things where either it's just in the process of being like, we can do this and we're going to come, and get something to compete with what Nvidia has, or they're just tripping over their feet. I don't think that they should just go and say we're going to have a GPU that does AI and just directly compete to Nvidia. I think they're in a state where they need to look outside of that box. Yeah, they can bring it, but they also need to look outside of the box and get something, a little bit more unique so that they can present it to the customers and say, you know what, this is more efficient. This right here gives you better options for what you're looking for. But that's a little bit of Intel rant in the Nvidia side, because Nvidia is so dominant here on what they're doing with AI. Now, on that, we're talking about 5080s earlier, but now let's talk about 5090s. Now, this thing is pretty interesting. One, it's 800 watts of power, and so Asus was able to convince Nvidia, you know what, that ROG matrix that we're going to create, it's 30th anniversary of our cards. We want to do something special. Let's do 800 watts. Nvidia, and Nvidia was like, okay, we can do it, but it's not using the 12 volt high power connector. It's actually going to use the BTF design. So this is just hooks into it's right next to the X16 PCI slot on the card. So this just plugs directly into the motherboard, and I believe that connector there can do up to 1,000 watts if I recall correctly. And so this does 800, so you got about 200 watts, there of factor safety, hopefully, right? We'll see. I don't know how many people will be getting this card, because you need one of their motherboards to support this, etc. But this is kind of one of those standards where, I can't remember if it's a fully standard yet or not, but it should be a standard. And I would say if it can do 1,000 watts, this is kind of a clean design. And if it's a little bit cleaner, and I guess you're going to have a problem, right? If that burns out as the PCB, the card's pretty much shot, instead of just, the melted connector, replace a melted connector, right? There's a part of me is just like, well, that's just a landfill thing then. But if they can get this right and you don't have that melting problem, so let's just say that there's no melting problem, this could be a really great option for all motherboards going forward. All the power is delivered through that. You have it on the motherboard, and if you get the same reliability as like 8 pins, you have something there that is pretty cool overall for everything. Now, you got to display, you got to get all that power to the motherboard, so to give it to this GPU. But that's a pretty good option overall, and that's something I kind of like to see overall because it's pretty cool, some of the innovation stuff. And I was thinking, like, did Asus come up with this because it's a cool idea, or did Asus kind of think, what, this is we went to the backside of having connectors on the backside of the motherboards. What happens if we had the graphics card to have a really clean look? If it's that item, I like the way they're thinking that some designs where companies were like, let's make a cleaner PC look, kind of migrated just into this. And it's, you know, it's one of those. I like to build with one. I want to see how well it works because I think these are really cool design techniques to have all the ports and plugs and the backside of the motherboard make a really clean look. You could have, especially with these fish tank cases, the full glass and everything else. You could have something that looks really cool with your cooling and everything else, liquid cooled and stuff, with lighting that looks really amazing with no wires there. I mean, with wires, a lot of these builds are look amazing already. Just think of what these guys can do and gals that build these things that just look spectacular. I'm not the artist they are, but I do like to build a nice clean PC, and this would help me get there a little bit quicker. So let's jump into AMD. I think I'm done with my Nvidia side stuff, and let's go to AMD here. If not, I guess I'm coming back to it. But AMD made some slight changes to 7800X3D. Looks like to some other ones. WCCF Tech had this, and like always, all these articles, Neowin, WCCF Tech, video cards. I've been forgetting, but I look at them. I try to remember. But they're all there. And the 7800 X3D didn't have some top SMDs. I don't have it open, but I have one here. I know it says 9,000 on the box, but it's in here. It's a friend's. Let's see. Maybe I can use it as a prop. Oh yeah, I can. Let's see. Put this back. So these top Sims right there on either side no longer are there on the newer versions, which, make a refinement, maybe make it better, maybe not needed, maybe they were thought they were going to do something else. So, yeah, there, better parts, right? Some parts didn't go there, replacement. I guess that this also seems to have done with some other, like, uh, other parts in the 7000 series. Makes sense. AMD kind of go through, clean this up. But that was just a little fun fact here. Now, the next side of AMD news, where was that? Was something I mentioned a little bit earlier. But Tiny Corp, it's a corporation that, if I recall, they were working with getting like these little boxes together to either from AMD or Nvidia. They put them together so that you could run models and stuff on there. And they're an AI firm, right? Here's a good WCCF Tech had a nice little description here. I forgot they had this in here. They are known for developing consumer and AI solutions. And so somebody posted on Twitter, asked a question. I do look forward, George Lutas, I hopefully got that one right, your name. I do look forward when competition can be brought back into the GPU space so we can have arbitraging way of profit margins one day. And so Tiny Corp responds, AMD is closer to Nvidia than most people think. We are working hard on the software gap. Similar to Intel with CPUs, if Nvidia stumbles for a generation, AMD can capture the majority of the market share. This is easier than gaming for market share to shift. So on the AI side, they put a lot of stuff into ROCm there, and I think that's why. Well, Nvidia raised their prices. It's kind of interesting how they kind of do these prices and stuff overall. But Nvidia or AMD closing that gap with CUDA with ROCm, I think, is one of the biggest. I was listening to Level 1 Techs and Wendell over there. He was talking about how much that's closed. You see a lot more where they're putting a lot more effort in. They get this closed. One of the big things is getting all that support on the consumer GPUs. They get the consumer GPUs support so everyone can just run it whenever. This is one of those big things where all of a sudden you start looking at it and you're like, well, I can build my model on here and then I scale it up, and I already have the AMD set. I know I can just use it in the ROCm, scale it up here for work or wherever it is. For on the professional side, this is one of those where as Nvidia has or AMD has broken in and sold a lot more, consumer GPUs. It does help the prosumer and the business side because you have that experience. And if you're like me, right, you do some software developing, and tinkering and stuff at home. This is one where, okay, all of a sudden I got that same stack working. I can do it. Um, yeah, it's good to see, and I'm glad that AMD is finally coming and getting and closing that gap because, it's one of those things that if they don't close it, right, Nvidia just keeps getting further and further away, and all of a sudden there's no competition anywhere, and then everyone's got is handcuffed to the great Nvidia and what they're going to give you. So on the whole burnout scenario, remember when sockets were burning out there with the Ryzen 9000 series, especially the 9800X3Ds, and everyone was concerned about their CPUs burning up or motherboards burning up, and especially with ASRock. So it was mostly with ASRock boards, kind of turned me off to ASRock boards. I've had a couple. We'll see what I do next, but the ASRock boards, I think now we're kind of past that. We'll see. So they did some testing and everything else, and AMD came out with a statement. So this is machine translated, but here is some of the information. I'm going to read this, but summing up first is poorly configured ODM BIOS. So the BIOS were not configured right in my summary of this. But since the beginning of the year, there have been cases where some sockets have burned out AM5 CPUs. There are still cases where people complain of some symptoms. So it seems, well, this is poorly cut. Seems difficult to say the problem has been completely resolved. I'm curious about AMD's position and countermeasures in this regard. So this is a question to AMD. The answer is, at AMD, quality is very important. At the end, we work very closely with our board partners during the product and BIOS development process to ensure the product works within specification limits, etc. The issues caused by some ODM BIOS not following the values provided by AMD. AMD positions is fundamental that it offers the highest quality products after thorough testing. We recommend that everyone always updates their motherboard's BIOS to the latest version. This is because not only in additional features, but performance improvements and solutions to problems that are reflected in the BIOS. One thing to add is that also the drawbacks of flexibility that AMD offers. If you are at competing platforms, there are a limited number of motherboards and CPU combinations that can be used for one platform. AMD, on the other hand, has a very wide range of combinations and support PBO and overclocking. This is why a number of cases is very large. It's a very complex problem, but we are working very closely with our partners to solve the problem and develop the platform. So it's machine translated, but it's a good answer, a really good answer overall. Kind of throws the ODMs under the bus a little bit, but the ODMs deserve to be thrown underneath the bus. And I'm going to go to Intel on this one and explain why. So it's not just an AMD problem why I'm throwing them underneath the bus. It's going to be the Intel reason why, because Intel was not a very tight controller of their BIOS. Doesn't seem like AMD is either. AMD just provides the values. Intel did. and the ODMs then took that and wanted to make sure that their motherboards performed, the CPUs performed better in their motherboards than with their competitors. And what happened there is that we seem to have, Intel had to go through now, 13th and 14th gen also had some other issues, but with all that voltage and everything else they were pushing through it, kind of seems like they were degrading, and they had to come out with that Intel base profile or default profile, whatever they called it. And that was a profile that was supposed to be selected. So this is not a problem of just AMD and Intel, but AMD and Intel need to put their foot down more and say, these are the values you need to follow. Stop screwing up stuff with your customers and our customers. But that's the reason why it is an ODM problem more than it is an AMD or Intel problem, in my opinion. AMD and Intel can't put their foot down harder, I believe. But it's because they want their motherboard to be the fastest with the CPU to use. I really think that provide value in the features of the motherboard more than providing value in the speed of what the CPU is. We expect the CPU to be, a certain performance, right? And if you get more out of it, well, it does propose questions to me as to why, right? Because there should be a baseline or a normal performance, right? More or less, if it's cooling or something else, overclocking, that's one thing. But if it's a motherboard going through and trying to push stuff, that then causes issues later on, that's a whole nother story. And so hopefully that they will kind of clean this up and, move a little bit more. Now, I got to speed up here. I've been really chattering on for a long time here. AMD says that the 9060, so not the 9060 XT, 9060 8 gigs will be OME only. They may have some, though, through some retail channels. Okay. This needs to be really cheap, though, in my opinion. Really cheap. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm just kind of a little frustrated on this. But let's see. We got a couple more AMD stories, and then we got to get to Intel, and then we got to get some of this stuff done. So, AMD had FSR in their open source side. Now they closed sourced it. Now, I really hope that AMD does open source FSR4. Now, DLSS is closed source, all of it. Intel XeSS promised that it was going to be open source. Still waiting on that. GPU Open is AMD's open source side of things. FSR 1, 2, and 3 are open source. Like to see FSR 4. They put it up temporarily. According to them, it was accidental, and now they've taken it down. So if you downloaded it and use it, I don't know how that will work. Now, I think it was underneath the MIT license. So, yeah. Is there any legal ramifications? No idea. I did not get it downloaded, nor am I going to try to go down that road and have some legal concerns. Of course, I don't have anything I really want to do with it right now, but yeah, it's one thing, they should just open source it. I get it, they're trying to protect some of their stuff, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think that even if it's open source and somebody, let's say Nvidia or Intel, take something from it, right? That's one thing. But I think if the users are able to see it and maybe help you out, I think that's a bigger benefit. So that's just my 2 cents there. AMD on the next one is ending the B650 production, which at some point we had the B850, 850 prices. I was looking at this because my brother was looking at building a machine, or I build it for him. I get to have some fun. You guys get a video on that, but he hasn't decided yet. But the B850 kind of seems to be pretty close in price to the B650. The 650s are just a little bit cheaper, so this makes a lot of sense overall to try to start transitioning over to the B850. So you get some, more ingrained stuff, but yeah, this is inevitable, right? You can't make the same things forever, and that's that's kind of how that goes. But let's jump over into Intel, and let's talk about Intel is going to have Battlefield 6 given away. So if you, what is this? With a purchase of qualified Intel products between August 25th and September 7th, you get Battlefield 6. I thought they were having problems with the ARC GPUs, so this makes it kind of funny. But does this sell Intel processors and GPUs? Unless you really sold on this, I don't see a reason. So you're kind of getting me on being like, I don't know why you would do this. So yeah, yeah, I really don't. Like you haven't shown me that yes, this is something to do. Now, let's get into some investment stuff. First off, SoftBank is going to invest $2 billion into Intel. They want to continue their exposure to semiconductors. And SoftBank's an investment firm, so they want to get bigger exposure. That kind of makes sense. And since the United States is pushing that they want to have their own semiconductor sector, well, let's throw $2 billion at it and see if we can't make some money on it. That's how I kind of see this. And it seems like SoftBank has had a lot of connections to dumping money into the United States, especially in the past like 8 years or so. So there is that. Now, on that same note, it looks like, there was a CHIPS Act and there was a lot of money that went to Intel. And in that money, it was just given to Intel and stuff. Now, it seems like the U.S. administration is going to have some value to it. I can't remember, some type of holdings inside of Intel. So that's going to be like a $10 billion value, if I recall. Was it 10 billion or a certain percent stake? Something like that. I was reading this earlier and I can't remember now. But, that's sort of, hey, using the taxpayers' money and giving it to them, and now they're going to have a little bit of uh, money on the hook. So taxpayers could have a percentage back if it goes well. If it doesn't go well, taxpayers just lost it all anyway. So on that note, do we have anything else of Intel before we go to uh, more interesting news outside of there? This is an interesting one. JP Morgan had said that for Intel right now, they should really focus on just their foundry business and the give up the making of chips and just have a foundry business. Really kind of interesting there. Um, I always thought that it was going to be hard for Intel to ever split the two, and maybe they're going to get there. And as years have gone on, this has seemed like they've kind of made it more and more separate. They've said the founder business can take separate orders and stuff like that. Have they gotten any orders yet? Maybe this is, companies could be worried that some of their intellectual property gets back to the Intel that designs the chips, right? We do have a lot of U.S. designers, so we have Qualcomm, Nvidia, AMD. Do you spin off that and keep Intel just the foundry business and make an Intel just focus on that? That could be actually really interesting. Now, those x86 licenses, you've gone down to maybe spin it off, right? And then somebody in Intel in x86 license does that, but or do you send that x86 license to AMD, or do you just kind of open source that x86 license and just stop collecting? I mean, they make some money from the collections of that. Right now, AMD still owns x64, so you'd have to get that license from them. But it'd be kind of interesting to see what Nvidia could do. This is my whole thing is get Nvidia on it. I don't think Intel would sell it to Nvidia, but there's some ideas in my head of what could happen, right? My wishful thinking here. So there's some interesting stuff. But let's start off with some of the craziness that has been going on with uh, Windows updates, right? So hard drives and SSDs are dying if you have a couple Windows updates, especially with large file transfer. And Phison acknowledge that, and Phison is working with Microsoft to do it. It's not all Phison controllers, I don't believe, because some of them are hard drives, but it is a problem and another Microsoft problem, another thing that Microsoft did. But on the same topic is Phison was getting seemed to have statements go out to its customers. Now, Phison, I should clarify, Phison did not send out the documents. They did not do that. But somebody is sending out stuff saying, hey, what the controller models are failing and everything else, and fake documents. And this is bad, right, for them, because now they have to go through all this legal action for this. But hopefully Phison gets past this. They do a lot. I've had Phison based controllers, and they've worked great, right, so far. Knock on wood. I haven't had any problems with this update. This is all on Microsoft. This isn't a Phison problem, right? This is a Microsoft problem, in my opinion. Um, Microsoft seems to break things every other week, but that's how it seems to be going here lately. So if you continuing with SSDs, if we get to and you need a Gen 5 SSD that has 8 terabytes and you have $1,000, you can get the Samsung 9100 Pro. So we'll add that in there real quick. I thought that was there. I sent it to my brother. I really would like to start seeing like 16 terabytes. That would be my thing. Of course, that'd probably be 2K. I still can't spend 2K on it, but I do have, a little server here, and if I can start going to just SSDs instead of hard drives, really compact that system down a lot, I like that option quite a bit. So also would reduce the size. I should also reduce the power, but yeah. So let's see what else we got here. We have PS5 and PS5 Pro increasing the prices $50 in the United States. This has already happened, started the 21st of August. So if you're in the United States, you're paying a little bit more money now. I was so the Pro's now $750. I was looking at and pricing out some stuff because I want to build a console equivalent computer, right? And here we are just going through running the prices, and I want to have 16 gigs of VRAM on there. So I'm looking at, still AMD 5. I want some upgradability there. Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, you can upgrade something. You can have, a nice little console-based or a console-priced computer that can run games, run Windows, do whatever you want. How do I do this? I'm at like $900 roughly right now, and maybe it seems, for a top-end console versus this, right? Can you get to spend an extra 150 bucks? Maybe that makes sense there, but that's how I'm kind of going across this and trying to price something else. We'll see where we get to. I really want to still bring that build to you guys, but I've been trying to kind of massage. You can go really cheap on the case, really cheap on the power supply, and probably get a lot closer. But if it's something I'm going to look at, I'll put that as a caveat there in for everyone when I do it. But I do not believe in cheap power supplies at all. I've had way too many cheap power supplies, ruined systems, caused me headaches trying to diagnose products that I spend more money on the power supply just so I don't have to deal with that problem. I want something good, well tested. Cybernetics is a good place for checking out power supplies. I really like the work they're doing there. Yeah, there's 80 plus does okay, but Cybernetics is where I kind of go to find, hey, these are power supplies that you should probably look into and get. So with that, let's see here. Where are we here? I already went through that article. We got some gaming news there. I didn't want to hit the gaming news quite yet because I thought there was some more Microsoft news. This is interesting. I guess we're going to mix up some of the gaming news with some of the other Microsoft news here. There was a Xbox app now is going to allow you to install different launchers. So GOG, it looks like they also have Battle.net and what was it, EA. So I am starting to think what Microsoft is going to do with their consoles. Now, maybe it's just going to be more for handhelds and not something that is Xbox based, but maybe it is that you are going to have the Xbox app as something to install all your launchers in, and then it manages to launch all your games. So handhelds, you don't have to jump out into different areas, and it can still have whatever performance modifications it has for that, but you stay in that mode purely the entire time. If that's something Microsoft's doing, I hope they bring it to everything, but that was just my thinking of why would you add in all the storefronts to just the Xbox game app and have it? Well, if you list all the games and then you keep that performance mode of whatever it is, Xbox mode, this is one way that it would make sense. And if Microsoft does something like that, it might be their best idea they've had in the last year in Xbox. So that's just something to keep in mind here of how they're doing that. Let's see, Microsoft. Oh yeah, there's again. Microsoft was breaking reset options and recovery options in older Windows. You know, they've brought out a fix for this flaw already. You know, in August again, but this this keeps on happening. They break stuff and they break stuff again, and it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. It's yeah, it's insanely frustrating. So I just don't get what it's why they keep going through this. So into more gaming stuff. So the Call of Duty Black Ops campaign looks actually pretty good. It's got some co-op stuff in it, and wanted to say that. So that's was at Gamescom there. So we'll see. We got what until November release, right? November, if I'm recalling correctly. Then we have the blah 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 blah. Oh man, that was not that did not come out right. The Nintendo Switch. There we go. Microsoft has the first game for it, and that is going to be Indiana Jones is going to be there for the Nintendo Switch. So first game there. I expect at some point that Black Ops is going to be there, Call of Duty, because that's what they said in their thing. So that's expected. Age of Empires 4, right? Yeah, 4 is coming to PlayStation 5. So that's pretty cool that you'll be able to have that. And CrysisX is going to be a huge open world. So this is Chinese developer Hero Games. So they are um, looking at building out this massive 1,200 kilometer squared open world that can have up to 5,000 players on a single server. Um, so supposed to have just 12 different areas. Looks pretty cool. Um, yeah, this might be something if you want to take a look at. But if that's something that comes out and is released, could be pretty interesting for gamers as well. Uh, let's see, what do we want to go on? Bioshock 4. So I like the Bioshock series. Looks like that they had some layoffs, which is sad, but looks like the next launch is going to be 2027, probably 2028, be pushed back. But if you're a Bioshock fan, something to look forward to there. And then MSI is launching a monitor, QD-OLED, and that's going to be a 500 hertz QD-OLED monitor. So my friend has their 4K 32-inch QD-OLED, right? I think he has their OLED, not QD-OLED. He has their 4K OLED 322. Looks amazing. Every single time I go over there, I want one, right? Because it looks just amazing. He really enjoys gaming on it. Just an amazing monitor. But if you want a QD-OLED one, I think that was 1440p, if I recall, and that's 500 hertz. Now we're going to end on this. I think that's my last article for today, which is Microsoft wants more affordable gaming, and that's going to be the Xbox gaming service. So excuse me, That's going to be interesting. I want to know what they're going to do with this. So, they want to bring more games to people. Now, that's great. I think bringing more games to people, bringing this artwork. Now, granted, as long as we save old games, it makes a lot of sense, right? We can bring those games to more people. But here's the thing on this. You can bring these games, and if there's latency or if it's a bad experience, let's put it that way. If it's a bad experience, the whole let's bring more games to people and a bad experience is still a bad experience. It's not what we want. So how do we do that and bring more games to people? I think that instead of increasing hardware costs, we should actually make hardware accessible, even if it has a cloud option. Make sure that there's more hardware accessibility, in my opinion. But just how I kind of read this, I it'll be interesting to see if they come with a console in that, let's say, $500 range because of inflation and everything else. If they hit that, I hopefully Sony and stuff will hit around that $500 range. If not, if that creeps up to a 750 and stays there, and then they have these handhelds, which I think even the handhelds are pretty, like $600. I don't know if that's going to be too well overall. So it kind of shows that the option is then cloud gaming, and having a little cheaper device is going to be a cloud gaming option and not a physical device that actually runs games, which I'm not a huge fan of. So with that, I've ran way too long. This is way longer than what I wanted to run, but here we are. We're at the end of it, and I want to thank you all for watching. Sorry about the stops. I've been having allergies like crazy. I've been trying to get this garden cleaned up, get bit up. We had so much water here in Wisconsin area. Well, it was a couple weeks ago or something where it was flooding and everything. That I'm just I'm still cleaning up stuff from it because it's hard to get in areas that were underwater for a week. So yeah, it's been fun. So been interesting, but I'm trying to go through the allergies and everything else and get everything else done. So I do appreciate all your support. Thank you for watching and supporting Gray Overload. It really means a lot to me. And until next time, God bless.